Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Credit Chat. I'm Rod Griffin, Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian. And I apologize, I'm a little late getting started. I'm having some apparently internet connectivity issues. We're having some weather. I don't know if that's interfering with my connection. So if I drop or something happens with the connection, I apologize. It's being kind of strange and finicky, but glad you're here. Ida Pearls, thanks for joining. If you've never been here, the whole idea is to have a dialogue and to answer your questions about credit reporting and credit scoring and fraud and ID theft, all of those things that are important to helping you be more financially healthy. So please ask any questions you have. I'll do my very best to answer. As I said, I'm Rod Griffin. I'm Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian. Our logo's right there. And I want to talk to you about credit. I want to answer your questions because we know that if you have questions, others do too. Blocos03, thanks for joining. Thanks for being here. Ms. Precious74, thank you for joining. Dario Christian26, thanks for joining. Again, if you have questions, feel free to ask. It's the time of year when people are starting to get and really starting to get those post-holiday bills, so it's time to think about some of those things. Car buying season, this is one of the high seasons for that. Saw some really interesting statistics around car buying. We have a new survey out that talks about some of the car buying data that's really kind of interesting. And what the average loan amount is today for new cars and used cars, the average loan payments, which is kind of surprising. So it might be interesting if you're thinking about new cars, and you can get some good deals right now as the new year starts. So think about those too. Be able to share some of that information. But we have a question. Wonderful. What credit is considered decent enough to get a decent car loan? Hump83, thanks for joining, and Blocos03. And the answer to the question is the same one for almost every credit question. It depends. It depends on the lender. It depends on the car you're buying and the dealership potentially as well. Generally, to get the best terms and best rates, you need scores that are around 750 and higher. For decent loans, it's usually 700 range, a little more. That's considered prime. So 700, 680 to 700 is kind of low prime. 750 and above is high prime. And if you're at 800 or over, you'll probably get whatever the best rates are always. And they'll be willing to sell you anything you want, just about. Within reason, of course. But if you're applying for a car loan, I saw something the other day, it's about 740 would get their best terms at one dealership potentially. So at 615 to 640, you're going to struggle a bit. Those are considered subprime scores. So it's going to make it hard to get the best terms and best rates. You might qualify. We'll probably have to pay higher interest rates. So if you can wait, might be better to work on your credit score. Get your credit reports. Work on reducing the debts you owe, especially if they're revolving accounts. Credit cards can reduce those debts. Look at Experian Boost if you haven't used that out. We talk about that about every week. So it's been almost a year that Experian Boost has been out. You can add your cell phone payments, your utility payments to your credit report with your permission by giving us permission to access your bank account that you pay them through, and that can help boost your credit scores. So that can help. And we're seeing people with thin files and scores below 680 actually see the most improvement. So that can help. So that's kind of the start. There's no quick answer. Why did I turn around? There we go. So it's hard to, it's kind of difficult to make a quick turn. So it's going to take a bit of time. Joyceley Lovely, thanks for joining. Ms. ZD4, always great to see you here. Angela 12C, thanks for joining. Beef fried rice. Why do companies like Lending Club offer loans to pay off your credit cards? So there are peer-to-peer lending organizations that may be consumer to consumer that facilitate that. That's kind of one of those things. But a loan to pay off your credit cards, if you can get an installment loan that is at a lower interest rate than your credit cards, and you can pay those off and not charge on your credit cards again. So your credit cards would be reported as paid in full and probably closed, but at zero balance at any rate. If they're still open, you wouldn't want to make any more charges. But if you can get a lower interest rate and a lower payment and you pay off that loan, it can actually help you reduce those accounts balances. It can help you improve your credit scores because you're reducing your debt load, but also help you make it easier because the payments may be lower over time. So it helps you manage your credit. So there are tools and resources that can be helpful. Paying off debts is key to having good credit scores. Having low balances on credit cards in particular, that's the second most important factor in credit scores. It's what we call the utilization rate, or your balance to limit ratio. And so the lower that is, the better. So, for in some instances, having a loan, or what we think of as consolidating your payments into a loan, that's a lower interest rate, maybe over a longer period of time, can reduce your payments, which helps you pay off that debt, but also protect your credit history. So it can be beneficial, but you have to look at whether or not it's going to work for you, and what the overall financial situation is too. Does paying cash for items that could be charged positively affect your rating if charging a small amount? Actually, no. If you're paying cash, that doesn't affect your credit report at all. So we don't see those purchases. You have to use a credit agreement. So you have to have a credit card or a loan. Those are the kinds of things that are reported. So as you use a credit account periodically, it's going to show a history of responsible payment records. So that's going to help you. So it's a good idea, if you have a credit card, to make a small purchase every month or two, turn around and pay that balance in full, so that there's activity, because your credit report and credit scores need to see that activity in order for them to be calculated. So you need to use the account. Doesn't mean you should make big purchases. Doesn't mean cash is the wrong way to go. I mean, cash is still king, but credit's a financial tool that can be there to help you if you need it, and take advantage of other financial incentives. So you could get perhaps more, greater discount on a purchase. You might get cash back or airline miles, those sorts of things. So if you're using credit and then paying that balance in full with cash, you might take advantage of some of those financial incentives that could be beneficial to you. But nothing wrong with using cash either, but it does not help your credit scores. So charging a small amount and then pay off. Exactly. Yeah. So you said it better than I did. My screen keeps wanting to flip around and show you our credit chat page, which is a great thing to know about. So if you join us at 2 o'clock Central, 3 Eastern on Wednesdays, you can join our Twitter chat. And we had a great conversation about savings and investing yesterday. So really interesting. Next, we're going to talk about how you can save money and manage your finances with a new family. So that's a really important one too. I try to be here, if you've not been on our credit chat before, at 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And if you're just joining, I'm Rod Griffin. I'm Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian. Nicholas DeFure, thanks for joining. The student loans finally fell off today. Thank you. Fantastic. Glad to see that. Ida Pearls, good to see you again. And hope things are improving. It sounds like they are. So good to hear that, and glad we were able to help. Something that, what if I have child support payments that showed up which have been paid? You should dispute them. Blocos03, if you have any information in your report that you believe is inaccurate or that's reporting with the wrong status, you should dispute that information. Go to Experian.com/dispute. You should be able to click on dispute next to that item in your credit report. And if you have a credit report, you put in the account number at that website, the report number at that website will pop up. If you have a personal report that's less than 60 days old, if you don't, we will give you a free report right there on the spot. Just tell us the identifying information we asked for, provide that information, and we'll give you a free report so that you can then go through that dispute process. But dispute the status as paid, we should be able to have that updated. It probably won't come off the report because it's a history, but it should show that it's paid and managed and taken care of, and that should help the situation. Tioget, thanks for joining. How to get that removed from your report? So again, you can dispute it. Talk to usually a government agency that's reporting that information. If it's paid, they may be able to take it off. That would be up to them. It may remain on the report as a matter of history showing that it's been paid, but no longer an active debt, essentially. So that can help as well. Podcast Pocket, thanks for joining. Mr. Shakur123, give me your bank card number. I'm sure you do. Ms. ZD4, good to see you. Thanks for joining as always. Missy Blessing, someone used your social security number to apply for credit. Now the address they use on your report. So a couple of things. If they used your identifying information, probably more than just your social security number, you should dispute that information as fraudulent. That's first and foremost. If there's an address you don't recognize, dispute that as a fraudulent address. We should be able to, or we will, dispute that information with the source. If you file a police report, for fraud or identity theft, and they'll know how to do that. I've had to do that myself. So in a little town in Texas, and they knew exactly what it was. And so they'll be able to file that police report. You provide a copy of that report, and you can do it right online. You can upload it. We'll be able to proactively remove that information, or what we call suppress it, so that we have a record of it. We'll know, and that'll help us prevent it from coming back. So take those steps. In some cases, the Social Security number may be the result of a typo, so it could be a transposed digit, and we will show all of those variations that are reported to us. In that case, it may not be fraud, probably isn't, and that's what we see most of the time. So if your Social Security number is 1234 and it's reported as 1324, we will show both. And if there's no other information that's related that would indicate fraud, we can help you identify where that's coming from and which of your creditors or sources of information is reporting it, so that you can contact them, get their records updated, and get it corrected, make sure it's reported properly. But we show it just in case, because we do not have access to the Social Security Administration records, and that's a common myth. We don't have access to those records to say Rod Griffin Social is, and to verify that. So we match based on the information reported to us. And therefore, we show all of the variations, because we want to make sure that you see everything reported to us, because as you're experiencing, it could be an indicator of fraud. We want to make sure you have that information, and so you're able to see it and act on it. And so that's possible. The address might also, in some cases, not necessarily yours, but just for people's knowledge, you may see address variations in the same way. You might see addresses that are associated with joint accounts you have or authorized users. So it's their address. If you recognize those addresses, it's probably not fraud, but it's important to check. Look for multiple items. So a Social Security number that's not yours, potentially a name, an address, and particularly if there's an account that shows up that's not yours, and then you'll probably know for sure. But it's a good idea to do exactly what you did. Look at the report, get a copy of it, know what's there, and then take those precautions. So you should certainly dispute it as fraud. You might want to add a fraud alert to your report as well. That's free. You can go to Experian.com/fraud and add a free initial security alert. It will stay on your report for a year. It says, I may be a victim of identity theft. Please notify me before granting credit my name, or call me, and you can provide a telephone number. That lets you take some additional steps, verify that fraud's happening. If it's not, then you can maybe just let that alert expire. If you find evidence it's fraud, file that police report. Add a 7-year victim statement. It says, I am a victim of identity theft. Please call me before granting credit my name. And that way, everyone who accesses a report will be notified of that statement. They have to respond to it in response to, as required by the federal law. So it's a law that they respond to it. So take those steps as well. It's free, and it will help protect you while you go through those processes. Join our Twitter chat next Wednesday. Yeah, thank you for my colleagues at Experian. 12 Pacific, which is 2 Eastern, or 2 o'clock Central, 3 o'clock Eastern. Make sure my time zone's right. We're going to talk about saving money while raising family. So that's a challenge. Andy Rohde, thanks for joining. ID Pearls went up 37 points. Fantastic. Marsha Cure 123. How can I send money, friend? Oh boy. Kind of funny. Blocos 03. I missed part of the question, but I'm glad. I think we're having a special giveaway during our credit chat next week. So more to know from my colleagues. There's going to be a $100 gift card and two $50 gift cards during our credit chat next Wednesday, 2 o'clock Central, 3 o'clock Eastern. Great way to help start saving if you're raising a family. So hope to join us there. You can learn more at Experian.com/news/about/credit chat, or just search Experian Credit Chat, and you'll be able to find the page and information, or go to ex.pn/credit chat as well. Abbub, thanks for joining. Little buddy, is there a way to increase your score by 50% in a few weeks? Probably not. It's not impossible, but it's not likely. If everything in the report is accurate and reported as it should be, and it's just the result of, and your score is a result of, late payments or high balances or things of that sort, you're probably not going to see a rapid increase. On the other hand, if there's anything that's a result of fraud or accounts that need to be updated, if you dispute that information because it's inaccurate, that you might see a change that would increase it significantly. Highly unlikely because scores tend not to, and reports tend to be very, very accurate. So it's probably not, but nothing's impossible. But 50% is a lot. So the other thing I would add is if you have low scores, your odds of increasing your score by 50% are greater than if you have higher scores. The higher your scores are, the longer it takes to improve them. So I tell my wife this, and she just laughs at me. But I tell her the closer you are to perfect, the harder it is to get better. And she just laughs at me. So what are you going to do? But if you have low scores, making smaller changes can result in bigger differences in the scores. So if you have scores that are subprime, say 500, 550, 600, 620, and you pay off a credit card, and you reduce that balance, and it's reported to Experian and updated, you may see a bigger increase in your credit scores faster. If you have a score that's 820 and you reduce your balances, you probably already have pretty low balances. You're making a small change, and that small change might result in just a few points over time. So keep that in mind. So it's possible, not likely to increase it that much. That would be huge, but not impossible. And that helped. Great. I'm missing pieces of the conversation, which I don't like. I'm trying to catch up. Am I better off using a secured credit card to build up your credit from 615 or wait till it's 700? A secured card's a great way to start regardless of where you are in terms of your credit scores. If you go to your credit union or your bank, you make a deposit in a savings account usually, and associated with that account, they issue a credit card. You use that credit card just like any other credit card would be. The savings account there is there so that if you don't pay the charges you make, the bank can take the money out of the savings account. So a secured account, you're not the one that secured, the bank is. It's about securing them, which some people don't understand. And so when you hear secured account, it's like, I'm going to be safe. It's not about you. It's about the bank, actually. But you have that savings account. Over time, they may convert that account to a regular unsecured account, which means you now have a regular credit card and you have savings. So it's a win-win. Doesn't hurt either way. And the only thing I recommend is make sure that the lender reports the secured account. Most of them do. I've come across a few occasionally that don't report the secured account initially. So it wouldn't help your credit scores. So ask them that. Make sure that they report it to at least one of the national credit reporting companies. We prefer Experian, of course, but ask that they report. And if they don't, that may not be all bad because sometimes that will get you started, show that you're a good risk, and they will convert that account again to an unsecured account and then report it. So it might be necessary to get your foot in the door and get that process started. But if they report it, it's going to help right away. And then get a better credit card and unsecured. Yeah, later as your scores improve, shift over to unsecured accounts, that sort of thing, and you can continue to build that history. Joshua T27325740. Thanks for joining, and Zoso. Thanks for joining and being on Periscope. Congratulations, welcome. Fatten wants to join. Thanks for joining and invite followers. Fantastic. Thank you. Brexit Gaming, thanks for joining. Missy Blessing, I tried to have P.O. Box address removed from the credit report. We refused. So it's a P.O. Box. It's likely being reported by an existing creditor or a creditor that's reporting information. And it doesn't affect credit scores. Be aware of that. Identifying information, social security numbers, dates of birth, P.O. boxes, addresses do not affect credit scores or lending decisions. So you don't have to worry about it from that perspective. It's there as identifying information. So it's there if it's not indicating fraud or we've blocked any fraudulent information, removed it, helped you with that kind of issue. You don't have to worry about it from it being a continuation. But if a lender's reporting it to us, it's going to continue to be updated. Even if we were to take it off, it would be reported again and would show up again. So it may be that issue. But it's not going to help or affect credit score. So I hope that's a bit helpful. Swamp Gator 62, thanks for joining. Carlos Samero, thanks for being here. I'm scrolling down. The more the merrier. Absolutely. I was watching my experience, my folks, my colleagues, and we want you to join if you can. Absolutely, and be here. We love to have you part as part of the conversation. Samsari, thanks for joining. What's the difference between closed and open collection account? So a closed account, any account that's reported as closed, usually a revolving account, so a credit card, but closed means it's no longer active. So a closed account is uh, either been paid in full or they're no longer reporting information for that account. And so it's not an active account. An open account is active. They're pursuing collections. They're the ones you should make payments to if you're able to make payments on those accounts. A closed account is done. It's just in your report as a record of the history of that debt. So you don't make payments if the account is reported as closed. You shouldn't work with that lender anymore or pay them because they no longer are actively pursuing the debt or don't own it anymore. So it's the open one that matters if that helps. Uh, Craig has them one. How can I have credit without having the possibility to get money of the bank? Give it again. Not quite sure I understand your question, but I know there's a catch 22, and it's a difficult issue that actually Experian's working to help resolve as well. If you have never had a credit history, never had a credit account, never been associated with a credit account, you don't have a credit history. And without a credit history, it's harder to gain access to traditional financial services. That's why at Experian we're looking at what we think of as alternative data or alternative information that's credit like that can help you break out of that cycle. Experian Boost, for example, if you have an existing credit report, have had just one account, you can use Experian Boost to help boost your credit scores, which can then help you gain access to banking services. So check that out. If you had an account, go to Experian.com/boost, and you can have us report your positive cell phone payments, your positive utility payments to help improve those scores. Another thing you can do is work with your landlords to have them report your rent. If you search Experian rent reporting, you can find our page and links to do that. We work with apartment management companies that manage huge complexes and individual landlords. We work with third-party organizations, to help report your positive rent payments. What we've seen when you do that is it creates a credit history, which is the first step. We also see that it helps people become scoreable for the first time, and if people have already had a report and have scores, it improves their scores. So have your positive rent payments reported if you're renting. That can help. And talk to your landlord. So a couple of things you can do to get started. Again, look at security accounts, talk to your credit union or your bank, ask if you can open a secured account. They may and make a deposit and savings, and then have them then subsequently issue a credit card. And most of them offer that kind of service and may be able to work with you. So a few alternatives there. Mommy Talk Show, thanks for joining. Do any of you charge a small amount like $50 a month and pay it off? It can build credit. Absolutely. It's not about how much credit you use or how much debt you carry. It's about how you use the credit you have available. So if you have one credit card with a $500 limit and you charge $10 or $20 a month and turn around and pay it off right away, you're going to show that activity. You're going to show that you're making the payments on time. It's going to improve your credit history over time. It's going to add that positive payment history. You do need that activity, and it's that activity that shows that you're using the account and doing it wisely and securely, safely. So that's all it is. It's not about how much you charge or how much you have. Paying a balance in full is the best thing you can do on a credit card. You don't need to carry a balance. There's a myth that goes around from time to time that says you need to only pay 95% of your balance because it helps scores. That's absolutely not true. You don't know where it came from. The best thing you can do from a credit scoring standpoint is pay your balances in full each month if you can, because the lower your balances, the better it is for credit scores, the less risk it represents. So way to go. So that's what it's about. I guess you're welcome. That's why we're here. This is, if you're just joining, I'm Rod Griffin. I'm Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian. This is Credit Chat. I try to be here 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern, and answer your questions about credit reports and credit scores, fraud and ID thefts. Have been some interesting kind of fraud-related things today. And if you or want to have even more conversation, you can join us on Twitter, 2 o'clock Central, 3 o'clock Eastern, noon Pacific on Wednesdays. And we have great guests and experts on lots of different financial topics and personal finance issues. And we're going to talk about how to save and raise it while you're raising a family, next week, next Wednesday. We talked about saving and investing yesterday. Great conversations there, and we have some gift cards that we're going to be giving away next week too. So check that out. You can learn more at ex.pn/credit-chat. Did the founding fathers have credit scores? No, because credit reporting didn't exist then. Credit reporting actually began at the turn of the 19th century, the 20th century, so the late 1800s, early 1900s. There's some debate among the bureaus, but Experian believes we were the first. There was a gentleman by the name of Jim Chilton in Dallas, Texas, that started going from merchant to merchant, collecting information about how their customers paid their bills to those merchants in the city, and began to keep those records, and that grew into eventually credit reporting as we know it today. So it's been 100+ years since credit reporting was established. In the time of our founding fathers, credit kind of existed, but it was personal. So it was, did you know the particular store owner, and would they let you have a credit account in the store, and they'd write down your name and what you bought and how much you owed, and then you would have to go pay them. And so that was the case for hundreds of years. With our modern credit reporting system, you can carry credit with you from one location to another, one city to another across the country. In the days before credit reporting, if you left one town and moved to another, you lost access to credit because it was built on personal relationships with those particular merchants and merchant to merchant. And that's what helps drive our economy in many ways today. Because of our automated credit reporting system, if you live in New York, you get a job in Los Angeles, you can move across the country, still have access to credit, because we can help verify to lenders in the new city that you're at risk and should qualify for financial services, be able to get the apartment that you need, set up your utility service, get a car if you need it, do all of the things you need to do using credit, and make sure that it helps you be financially successful, financially healthy. And most of the time, it happens behind the scenes. You never even have to think about it or worry about it. You apply for services. It says in the application, generally, we'll check your credit report. And if you're managing your credit report and understand how to use your reports and scores, it's a financial tool that helps you be more financially successful. That's what we want to accomplish. That's why we're here. That's why I'm here. That's why we have these conversations, is how do you use that credit report to be a financial tool, not be a barrier to what you're trying to achieve. Because you should be able to walk into a lender or into an apartment leasing office or anywhere else where credit might be used, know exactly what they're going to see, know exactly what to expect. It should give you power, not be a barrier when you know how to use it. The closed accounts negatively affect your credit. Block 03, initially they can. So if you close a credit account, a revolving account, so talking specifically about credit cards, when you close an account, you lose the available credit limit on that account, which affects your utilization rate. It causes your balances as compared to your available limits to go up because you've lost some of that available limit. And so your scores will initially drop a bit, usually not very much. And typically after a month or two, which is a billing cycle or two, they bounce back up because the scores recognize the utilization change wasn't because you took on a lot of debt, it's just because you closed an account. So it actually was a result of a positive action in that regard. You have an account you don't need to use anymore. So it wasn't negative at any rate. So you see that happen. So yes, they can initially. If you pay off an account, like a large debt, a car, a mortgage, your scores might dip a bit as well initially because there's a huge change. So anytime things change in your report, you'll see scores move up and down. So they kind of do this like the stock market, but without the big swings generally. They're kind of trend upward. So don't panic when you see small changes. I watch my scores through our app, through Experian's app, and they go up and down often. So I get really close to 850, and then they drop off, and then they go back up again. So it's just kind of the nature as things change. You make more charges. Like over the holidays, I charged a few things because I was traveling and I used a credit card for security reasons, because I'm protected from fraud and those sorts of things. Don't have to carry a lot of cash. So my balance went up. So my scores went down a bit, paid off the balance. In the next month or two, my scores will go back up again. And so understanding that helps kind of take away some of that consternation that happens when you see the scores go up and go down when something changes, but it can. Did the boost? I hope it helped. Like to hear about your experience there. The prepaid cell phone qualify for boost. Prepaid will not, because it's not paid on a monthly basis through your checking account or your savings account. It has to be a contract that's month to month, and you're making payments regularly. So a prepaid wouldn't work. Question about boost. If I pay with PayPal, yeah, so it wouldn't work. So you need to make the payment through a what we call a demand deposit account, a checking account or savings account, so that when we go to check, we can find the name of that utility or the name of the cell phone provider. That's how we match it, and then can pull that payment in. If it's made through a credit card company, we can't see that, or a credit account, we can't see it. So we need to be able to see it, see the name, so we can pull it in. So probably not in that case. Boost you 99 points. That's fantastic. So that's probably the highest I've heard. I've heard, people, a few people 30, 33 points, but never almost 100 points. That's amazing. Can we write to Experian to have them look at phone electric payments made if your bank is not on Boost? We should. I had that happen with my bank, so it wasn't in the initially in the list of banks that were working with us. That's expanding all the time. You should have, I think, in the Boost process, and I haven't looked for a while, but you should be able to input. We will ask for your input. We may provide have a survey that follows on. Tell us the name of the bank, and you're trying to get signed up and couldn't. We are following up and adding new lenders all the time. So that may be part of what happened there. How many days do you recommend to wait before disputing a paid off balance? You need to give a paid, put it this way, when you pay off an account, or make a payment to a lender, even, it takes about 30 days, 30 to 45 days. Typically you should allow for that change to appear in your credit report, because lenders report those changes to us basically once a month. So if you have a lender and you pay them off right at the beginning of the billing cycle, they won't provide that update to us until the end of the billing cycle. So allow 30 to 45 days before you dispute, because it's probably just a matter of timing before they've updated us. If you make a payment and you look at your report immediately, it won't be there. It's not a real-time update. So allow a payment cycle, a billing cycle, so 30 to 45 days. Then check your report, see if that payment's been made. It doesn't happen immediately. Now, it could happen faster. If something changes and it's just a couple of days before the lender closes their books for the month, and they update their records and then they report it right away, it could happen quickly. Lenders update information with us every single day, but they typically update your account once a month, but they have millions of accounts in some cases, and they update them throughout the month. So it's, you can't really say it's on this date. Every account in a credit report is not updated on the same day each month. I read that somewhere the other day, and it's not accurate. Information is being updated every single day, all day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year in a report. So if you have multiple lenders, your report could change throughout the month depending on when those particular lenders report your information to us, so your account information to us. I'd rather 50 points instead of a gift card. But we can't do that. That's not what we can do. You might be able to learn some things and get a gift card and improve your score 50 points over time. That would be good. Wait just 30 days from the date last reported. Why do I keep turning around? Just 30 days from the date last reported, for instance, a month ago before it gets up. Yeah, it's kind of that. That's essentially what happens. So wait 30 days, to 45 days, depending on the situation. Usually it's within 30 days. Smart Kid 2020, the credit bureaus. Ms. ZD4. Well, it's not that, and it's interesting, the way you look at that, it's not that we gather information on people. It's not, that sounds like spying. That's not what we're doing. What we do is collect information from lenders about how you repay the debts you owe to them. So one way to think about it is the bank is lending you their money, and they're telling us how you are repaying their money. So an analogy I often use is, when people say, "Hey, that's my information. You shouldn't be able to share it." If think about this, if you live in a house and your neighbor to your left says, "Hey," comes over to me and says, "Hey, Rod, I need to borrow your lawnmower," and I say, "Okay, fine, I'll loan you my lawnmower." 2 weeks later, I don't have it back. Call him and say, "Hey, I need my lawnmower back." So now I'm collecting. Still no lawnmower. So I go over and knock on his door. He finally gives me. I take it back from him, but it's broken. A couple of days later, my neighbor on the right side comes over and says, "Hey, that guy on the other side of you wants to borrow my lawnmower. Should I lend it to him?" As a credit reporting, that's under the notion that the information in credit report is the consumers, and we shouldn't be able to share it. The idea would be that I couldn't tell my neighbor that, well, my experience was when I loaned him my lawnmower wasn't a good one, so I would think twice about it. If the idea is, or if the position is, it's my information, the bank can't tell people how I repaid that debt. How do they know? I mean, to me, it's that kind of analogy. It's my information about how the person who borrowed my lawnmower returned my lawnmower, kind of the same way that the bank is sharing information about how the person who borrowed their money repaid their money. And that helps everybody actually in the long run. It's about showing that you're a good credit risk, that you will be responsible when you borrow money from a bank. And by the way, if a bank's lending money, they're lending from their balances, which means they're lending my money or your money that you've deposited in that bank. So I want to make sure that my bank's making responsible lending decisions so that they get repaid. So it's what credit reporting does is provide a record of how a bank repays, or a person repays that bank's money when they borrowed it. That helps show that a person's a good credit risk. Almost the vast majority of reports actually have no negative information in them. They actually always help people manage their credit well, have access to financial services, make financial services less expensive than anywhere else in the world. So it's a hugely beneficial, but there's always another way to think about that information. So think about if somebody borrows your lawnmower and doesn't return it, whose information is that to share? So another way just to think about it in simple terms. Hard inquiry. Missed the question again. How am I missing all these? So missed the hard inquiry response. Are there truly different FICO scores for different things? Auto home, yes, N3 WKB. There are lots of different FICO scores. Now, there are FICO scores that we call generic scores from FICO. FICO is a company. If some people don't understand that, FICO's at one point stood for Fair Isaac Corporation. Now it's just FICO. Their product is credit scoring. So they create the algorithms that pull in the credit report information and do the calculation. So that's how it works. So they create scores, and if you're buying a car, the scores are a little different because they're trying to predict the likelihood that you'll pay your car loan than for a score that's for, say, mortgage lending. So buying a house, those scores can be a little different. If you are working with a credit union, they may have different scores than a national bank because the customers are different at a national bank versus a credit union in the way they manage their finances and their financial needs. So the scores can be a bit different. So there are lots of different credit scores. You only have 3 credit reports. You have a credit report from Experian, a credit report from TransUnion, a credit report from Equifax. Their lenders determine what scores they're going to use to help analyze that information to predict risk. So FICO is one company that does that. Vantage Score is probably their largest competitor. There are others. Lenders create their own scores in some cases. So yeah, there are lots of scores. Don't panic about the scores. Just ask your lender, what's the scale? What does it mean in terms of risk? What's my score within that scale? And you'll know what it means in relation to that particular bank. If you have a good score on one system, you'll have good scores on the others. I've never seen a case where that wasn't what happened. So take care of them. FICO scores well for cards, and they have what they call bank card scores, or scores for credit card lending. So that's true too. Good cash flow is part of it. Smart Kid 2020, you're right. Managing cash is a key, and cash is king, still part of that process. And financial management, cash is a piece of it. Credit is a piece of financial management, personal finance, just like it is for business. And businesses use credit as a financial tool, just like we can as individuals and should use as individuals. How's it using a credit company to help you with your credit scores? Sissy AKJ, I'm not quite sure I understand your question. So if you're thinking about credit repair, if someone's saying, hey, pay me X dollars and I'll get that accurate information off your report because it's negative, that would be a violation of federal law. They can't make that promise. And the best way to improve your scores is if you're paying someone like that, is to actually use it to pay down your debts. You'll see your scores improve faster, more, and more permanently, and you won't be out that money. So go to the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the Federal Trade Commission, and search their information about credit repair companies, and you'll find that great information, one, and two, they'll tell you that paying someone to remove accurate information from a report doesn't work and is probably going to separate you from hard-earned money and not help you. There's something called the Credit Repair Organizations Act, also something you should be familiar with. It specifies what a credit repair firm must do before they take a penny from you. So, they have to have a contract that specifies what they're going to do. They have to fulfill that contract in full before they take any payment. They cannot take money up front. They can't promise to take accurate information off your credit report. They can't ask you to change identifying information. That would be fraud, and it could get you in trouble too. So, lots of things you should be aware that you have 3 days to withdraw. Make sure they're complying with those rules too, and it's more than rules; it's a law. So, be aware of those things. If I have Gabriel Morales B, thanks for joining. You're working on your credit. You'll get there. Can have problems if I want to rent a property. Potentially, what will usually happen is the lower your scores, the more they may ask for a security deposit. Things like that. So there's probably going to be more cost up front. That's the unfortunate and challenging component. Once you get that apartment, ask them to report your rent payments. So if you're paying those rent payments on time, they can report that information to Experian. That can help improve your scores. So one way to add what we think of as alternative data, something that's not traditional credit, but can help you improve your scores. There's many thoughts on programs like national. Yeah. So kind of talked about credit repair. Can't speak to any. There's some good ones out there, some legitimate ones, and some bad ones. If you need help, one of the organizations we often refer people to is called the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. They're a nonprofit organization. You can go to nfcc.org. They have organizations around the country that can help provide financial counseling, credit counseling, can help work with your lenders, and they're nonprofit, so they won't take exorbitant fees and may help you at no cost at all, and often do. So really important. Can gap insurance help when you have an upside down car loan? Can. If something happens and you have that gap insurance, it can help cover that difference if you need to get another car, for example. So yeah, it's possible. And right, thanks. You're not the same day of the month that updates. Exactly. That's exactly right. So know if dealerships just choose their own FICO company. Well, what happens with FICO scores and car dealerships is that the dealership actually will do something called shotgunning. So they'll send your application to multiple lenders to try to find the best terms for you. That's okay. They'll check the score. Those lenders will check the scores they use and then respond to that application. And that's okay. You'll see a list of those lenders that checked your report in your credit history. They're hard inquiries, but they only count as one because they're for auto lending. You don't have to worry about those inquiries affecting your credit scores, and you can shop for the best rates because when you're buying a car, buying a house in particular, the scoring systems recognize you're buying one car, you're buying one house, and they will count them as only one inquiry or not at all. So don't worry about those. And I can't speak to specific cards. I mean, that's something that you need to look at in the terms and rates, those sorts of things, and find what's best for you. We do have a card matching service. Go to Experian.com. You can find out more there. And you can tell us what you're looking for in a card, and we'll provide a list of the cards that best match your criteria in the order that they most match. So based on what you tell us you need. Yeah, and I can't recommend any companies. Need a Lamborghini? No, you don't. You want one, I would too. So and that's the thing. That's the wants versus needs conversation. We need, might need a car, but we don't need. I don't need a Ferrari, Lamborghini, Porsche, much as I would like any one of those. Can't afford them in my driveway. But I've been gone a little bit long today. Thank you all so much. Jack and Joy, thanks for joining. Right on time for me to say I'm going to sign out. Girls like the truth. One last question. How do you do a successful dispute? Well, start by going to Experian.com/dispute. Get a current copy of a report. If you don't already have one, we'll give you one right there. And then if there's information that you believe is inaccurate, click the dispute button, follow the instructions that are provided. If it's accurate, it's going to stay on the report. If you believe it's inaccurate, if you have documentation like a billing statement, things like that that show that it's been paid or you've never been late, also be specific in your dispute. The online system will help with that. Things like, I was never late, this is fraudulent, this is not my account, never lived at this address, things like that. We can help enter that information so that it's very clear to the lender or to the source of the information exactly what the issue is. It's very important. It sounds kind of cold, but go there, but we'll help with that. Once that dispute's entered, we'll send it to them. They then return a response to us. If you disagree with the results, you should add what we call a statement of dispute. A statement of dispute says, I disagree with the results, and here's why. Lets you tell your side of the story. And so anytime someone requests your report, they'll be notified there's a statement on file, and they should look at that. Don't let you tell your side of the story if you disagree, so it gives a full picture. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up today. Thank you all so much for all of the fantastic questions and for being part of Credit Chat. I'm Rod Griffin, Director of Consumer Education and Advocacy for Experian. I try to be here 1:30 Central, 2:30 Eastern to answer your questions about credit reporting, credit scoring, fraud, and ID theft. Join us on Twitter on Wednesdays, 2 o'clock Central, 3 o'clock Eastern, noon Pacific, and be ready. And I'm tongue-tied, but join us on Wednesdays. Next week, we're giving away several gift cards. So join us there. You might have a chance to win a gift card, and we'll be talking about how to save when you're raising a family, which is a really important and very challenging thing to do, having been there. So thank you all so much for joining. Hope to see you all again. Take care, everybody, and we'll talk very soon.